explanation you're looking for?
No. We gave away apples, but we're here because the community garden was destroyed by the city on Friday.
You know what's funny? I was the one who put the community garden together, if you ask the folks. And I first came down there and I took it, the bull by the horns, and we got it done. So I think that's great.
So let's get
With Occupy the People's Peas? Wait, the People's Peas garden you put together?
Right behind there.
Oh, we're referring to the one at Queen's Park.
Oh, Queen's Park. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking the one on Elizabeth Street.
Oh, okay.
This little garden there.
Because the city took apart the one at Queen's Park, so that's what we're talking about.
Oh, I'm all for gardens.
So could you tell your brother and the others to fix that up for us?
Amid a global food crisis, City of Toronto workers destroy free community food garden right before big harvest.
Okay, well, I told him to pass it on to his brother, so he said he's for gardens. So.
You, the owner.
Nobody said a word to us.
Hey.
So,
hi,
how are you?
That's the thing. I mean, you should know. It's in your writing. It was all over the news.
I know, but we have 100,000 people, and the fact that you guys all knew, but we didn't know. The first time I heard of this was unfortunately on a Twitter message, and then we were responding saying, "What is this?" So Darcy, you know me. You know me. You could have picked up a phone at any single time and said, "Hey, this is happening. We're planting."
Sorry, no, I don't. There shouldn't be any hostility to Kristyn.
No.
But this gentleman just said I was spiteful. Right?
I said it was a spiteful move to remove that garden.
Yeah, but it wasn't her though. I understand.
Councillor in the area.
Yeah, progressive, very progressive councillor. So.
Well, no. Okay, so first of all, let's take a step back. Number one, we didn't know that there was a garden, and certainly if we had known a garden, we actually would have been able to bring in some coordinated city resources. Like we brought in 2 tons of compost for Summerhill. We actually helped build these community gardens. I had 200 planter gardens, planter boxes right after Celebrate Young that were looking for homes. We would have worked with you. We're actually trying to build more green spaces, but we had no idea. So the first time I was notified that there was a garden at all was the day that it was being torn out, and somebody randomly sent me a Twitter message and saying this is being torn out, and I said, where is this? It was just an image of some shrubbery. So at that point in time, he said Queen's Park, and then I said, Queen's Park, that's in the word. How did we not know this? So we sent a message to Richard Ubben, who is the general manager of Parks, Forestry, Recreation, and Richard said they had no idea who the garden belonged to. So for whatever intensive purposes, what I'd like to say is that if people are interested in building community gardens, I want to work with you. And we can find the appropriate garden spaces, and we can even bring out city resources, whether it's planter boxes, or if it's compost, or if it's seedlings. Like we just work with Landscape Ontario and green all of Yonge Street. Like this is not something that we don't want to do. It's just that I didn't know that this was happening. So I would tell you that I was really sad to learn that the day before Harvest Day that the community lost the pea garden. I was very, very sad to know that. And we wouldn't want to make that mistake again. So if we can coordinate our efforts, certainly we'll work with you in the future. Because your objectives, which is to green the city, to build local food security, is our objective as well.
What about the schoolhouse shelter? That's also in your writing, and it's definitely providing essential services to an area. It's well known that they want to develop condos in that area and push out all the poor people, and this definitely seems part of that agenda.
There's no plan to build condominiums in the area and push out poor people, and I think that is something that's been a misnomer from the beginning, is that we are undertaking a very broad and comprehensive downtown east planning review, and it talks about building more affordable housing, streamlining the station social agency service, integrating social planning with an urban planning and a workforce development lens. That's what we'd like to do. So,
but why are you closing down the schoolhouse shelter, which is providing essential social services in that area where there's a lot of lower income people?
But we know that there is no definitive close date. And Dixon Hall, who has been our service provider for 40 years, has said to us at the city that they're not interested in providing this model of care. So we're working with them to devise a new model of care. There is no definitive close date. And this is the thing that I think for those who are sort of sharing information needs to come forward with as an honest proposition, is that No one has said a definitive close date, and this is something that we're working on. We're building more affordable housing in Ward 27 than there has been in 20 years, and this is a priority of ours. Even the Downtown East Planning Framework has a zero displacement strategy, period. So it's all enshrined in there, it's codified in there, and the principles, guiding principles for planning, all our new planning is following that line of objective. So I'd like to at least ensure
So you're not planning on closing the school shelter?
I have never said that I'm
Schoolhouse
closing
shelter anytime soon?
If Dixon Hall is not providing the service, and they've identified that this is no longer the model care of service that they'd like to deliver, we're working with them to reform it and to modernize it to make sense of it. And I've never once said that we're closing one thing or the other. We just said, based on what they've come forward with, is that 3 years ago they said that they wanted something different. So I don't have a full-on strategy, but certainly this is something that we're working with. And they're at the table as well as our shelter support staff.
What about Wellesley Green Space?
What's that?
What about Wellesley Green Space?
11 Wellesley.
What's next?
Where's that at right now? What
Thank
level
you
of bidding?
so much for your advocacy on that day. I thought you were
It was fun.
incredible.
It was not, well, it was funny, but it was not fun.
No, but you were extraordinary, and I'm glad that we had a lawyer just to make sure everything was going to go smoothly. With respect to 11 Wellesley, it's a 2.1 acre of land. We can do so much more than just build 4 market condominiums, which I've been dead set against, that if the project only builds condominiums, they are not going to have my support. It has to have other community uses. Right now, before the province is a proposal that looks at affordable housing. I want to build that. It has to expand a green public space that's going to make sense, that's going to be user-friendly for everyone. No one is to be excluded. We want to also build a new recreation center as well as a new space possible for the Metropolitan Community Church. So public land for public use is something that we strongly support, and I've been very clear on that. If the province is not willing to negotiate with the city, I'm going to run out of options.
First, and the City TV was broadcasting the gardening live, and the garden was broadcasted to hundreds of thousands of people across the country on CBC, Toronto Star, the Metro on the front page, and many people knew about it. The city knew about it. It was called the People's Peace Garden because it belonged to the people. It was planted by literally hundreds of people in the community and maintained by the people. And regarding the city not knowing who did it or having contact information, Troy Ford, supervisor who supervised the construction of it, was photographed holding the sign with our contact information on it. And this was at the garden on Friday. And so the city knew that it was there, and repeated attempts were made to contact multiple councillors in the area, as well as MPs and MPPs who represented with no response back. And these were made throughout the growing season.
No one contacted my office, and certainly I think that I see some friendly faces, people that I've worked with on a number of other issues. If I had known, that garden would not have been torn out, especially not the day of harvest. We would have worked with you on identifying the proper spaces to build a bigger garden, perhaps. Like local food security is an important issue for myself, and we've spent a lot of time advocating for green spaces, and we're actually trying to build more green gardens within TCHC buildings. Like I said, I was actually very sad and disheartened to learn that the day before harvest, it came out. Like we were shocked. We had no idea. So even though it may have,
You say we were shocked. Who are you specifically referring to?
My staff and I. So I have 4 political staffers and myself as a local councillor. We are engaged in a lot of hard discussions, and this one never came up. Even when I see some friendly faces here when we were at the protests for 11 Wellesley, no one told us that we were standing inside Queen's Park. No one even pointed out to me that somewhere on that land was a pea garden.
So I have a quick question. If we went and collectively replanted that garden, you would make sure that it wouldn't get taken out? Like if we went back to the exact location, redid it right now, that would last?
It wouldn't necessarily last per se, because I don't even know where along
It's in the northwest section of the park, right across.
So let's just say, why don't we do a walk of the neighborhood, which I'm happy to do with you. We can tour the various locations that you'd like to work on, and then we can identify what are the appropriate spaces and who's going to maintain and take care of it. And if it means, for example, in 2013, our goal, yours and mine, is that we build 5 new community gardens in Ward 27, then let's set that as a goal. Because as far as I can tell, Ward 27 is very deficient with respect to green space, but we're also very deficient with respect to community garden space. I've got one community garden in the entire ward, and that's sitting at Moss Park. If we can build them elsewhere, I'm happy to work with you. And if that's the
Park
goal,
is symbolic, though. It's also really symbolic, and that's why, like, I would hope that you wouldn't say, like, find the appropriate place as in not on Queen's Park.
well, why don't we walk the space? Because I think it's very important to understand what is the terrain that we're walking upon. There's 200-year-old trees in Queen's Park. Is that the most appropriate space? I don't know. I'm not.
We planted it on top of a tree that they had just cut down because it was dying as well, which is why it grew so well.
Right now we're talking a bit abstractly for me because I wasn't on the site, but I also want to make sure that city staff will come out to support the work, because if we have a community garden program at City Hall, as you know, and I've been able to do a lot with respect to greening Ward 27 with very little resources, including the iconic Yonge Street, where we brought in an urban park, right? Boulders from French River, logged trees to sort of build a park. We dropped 20 new trees on Yonge Street alone and planted them in a tiny bed of soil, and it sat there for 4 weeks. So if we can do more of those projects, more of the community garden projects, I'd be very happy to support the endeavors. I do have to go to my Heritage Preservation Board meeting, so maybe last question.
I go to these parks and I just see that the city seems to be redeveloping these parks, and every one of those little improvements involve pouring down more cement. And I think that if the city wanted to save money, whoever is in city planning that is being